You see that woman over there, the one folks used to call crazy, always staring out of her window at midnight? Yeah, that woman solved one of the most twisted missing person cases the town of Cedar Ridge, Arizona has ever seen. It all started with what she saw that night, something that made absolutely no sense at first. But that tiny detail, that strange image outside her window, it cracked open the whole mystery. And what she saw led straight to the man who had vanished without a trace. But to understand what really happened, we have to go way back to 1951, to a small rural town on the outskirts of Cedar Ridge. That's where Eli Harrison was born. Eli grew up on a small plot of land with his parents. His father, a quiet old ranch hand, owned just enough land to scrape by. They raised chickens, grew corn, and prayed the roof wouldn't cave in during storms. That was life. Eli wasn't made for the ranch. By the time he was 16, he walked up to his father and said, "Dad, I can't stay here. I need to see the city. I want to move to Cedar Ridge." Now, Cedar Ridge wasn't New York or anything, it was just a medium-sized desert city, but for a boy who'd only known dust and silence, it was everything. His dad didn't argue. Deep down, he knew Eli was right. If he stayed, the best he could hope for was to inherit a few acres and maybe run the same dead-end life. So he made a call. There was a friend of his, Rick Dalton, a guy who'd grown up in the same rural town but moved to Cedar Ridge years earlier and opened an herb shop downtown. Natural remedies, teas, that kind of thing. He told Eli, "We'll wait till after the 4th of July. Rick's coming back to visit. I'll ask him to take you with him. Maybe he can help you get on your feet." And that's what happened. That summer, 1967, Rick rolled into town in a dusty Ford pickup, had a beer with Eli's dad, and next thing you know, Eli was packing up his things. 15 days later, he was in Cedar Ridge for the very first time. Rick put in the work right away. The shop smelled like dried mint and lavender. Rick taught him how to grind herbs, how to talk to customers, how to count change fast without looking, and how to spot people who'd try to steal. He gave Eli a cot and a pillow in the back of the shop. "Ain't much," he said. "But it's a start." And Eli? He worked like a man possessed. He learned everything. By the end of the second week, he wasn't just a helper. He was like a junior partner. Rick trusted him. Hell, sometimes he left the whole store in Eli's hands. Years passed. Eli only left town once a year, every 4th of July, to visit his parents. 15 days, then back to work. No vacations. No days off. He was saving. He was learning. He had a plan. By the time 1971 rolled around, Eli had saved up enough to open his own store. When he told Rick he was leaving, Rick looked crushed. But he respected it. Helped him even, showed him the best suppliers, vouched for him with vendors, even helped him move the first load of stock. Eli rented a small garage behind a widow's house, Martha Tillman, a single mom with 3 kids trying to stay afloat. The rent was cheap, and the space was just enough. And slowly, people started coming. First a trickle. Then a stream. By 1974, Eli was well known. He had money, he had a reputation, and soon, he'd have enemies. Because one of those people who came to his shop, well, they would vanish. And everything would change. In 1985, Eli was 34 years old and finally ready to settle down. His folks back home arranged for him to meet a sweet, quiet girl named Nancy, from the same small desert town he grew up in. Within 6 months, they were married. Nancy moved with him to Cedar Ridge, into the modest house Eli had bought not far from his shop. Life was good. They had 5 kids over the next several years, and Eli kept his head down, working, providing, staying out of trouble. But every 4 or 5 years, Martha Tillman, the widow who still technically owned the garage Eli was renting, would knock on his door. "Cost of living's gone up, Eli. I need you to increase the rent," she'd say. And every time, Eli would sigh, bite his tongue, and agree. Until one day, something changed. 2005. Martha's son, Zach, had grown up by now. He was 30, had a degree in business administration, and 0 job prospects. That afternoon, Martha and Zach called Eli over. He thought it was a neighborly chat. It wasn't. "Eli," Martha said bluntly, "Zach needs to start his own business. We've decided to turn the garage into a storefront for him." She gave him 1 month to vacate. Eli was stunned. He had been there for over 30 years. Built his life in that space. Customers knew exactly where to find him. This wasn't just a garage, it was his identity. He tried to reason with her. Tried to talk to Zach. Didn't work. Zach flew off the handle, started shouting. Martha joined in. Eli turned to leave when suddenly, Zach lunged at him with a crowbar. Neighbors had to come out and separate them. That night, Eli returned home, bruised in spirit. He told his wife everything. In the days that followed, the harassment began. Zach would sneak down at night and dump Eli's herbs out onto the sidewalk. He smashed flower pots, threw rocks at the door, and even scared away customers by yelling obscenities out the window. Martha? She'd pour mop water from the upstairs apartment onto Eli's goods below. Eli kept quiet. He didn't fight back. He wasn't that kind of man. But word spread in the neighborhood. Everyone knew what was going on. Most folks sided with Eli. Then, one day, a man from across the street approached him. "I heard what they're doing to you," he said. "I've got a garage. Not far. If you want to move in, I'll rent it to you for the same price. You don't deserve this." The next day, Eli thought it over with his wife. He realized this was his way out. Within 48 hours, Eli had cleared out the entire shop. He packed up his herbs, stacked his crates, and moved 20 yards down the street. He handed Martha the keys. "All yours now," he said. "Best of luck." Martha smiled. She thought she'd won. But what she didn't realize was this. Eli's new shop faced directly across the street. And his loyal customers? They followed him, every last one of them. Martha and Zach had set up their new herb business in the original garage. But no one came. Customers ignored them. People knew Zach was a hothead. They'd peek in sometimes, but no one bought. Zach would sit in his empty shop, watching Eli's new place packed with life. And that's when the hate turned to something darker. Zach wasn't just angry anymore. He was obsessed. Zach Tillman couldn't take it anymore. Day after day, he sat in his empty shop, watching customers pour into Eli's store across the street. It ate him alive. He kept telling himself, that should have been mine. And so did his mother, Martha. They started scheming again. First, they tried raising the rent, over and over, to make Eli snap and walk away. But Eli kept paying, every time. So eventually, they forced him out. Took his spot. Took his idea. Took everything. But they couldn't take his customers. And that's what stung the most. Eli thrived. Zach failed. The Tillmans shut down their store in frustration. But instead of walking away, they turned their full attention to destroying Eli. It started with little things. Zach would knock over herb displays, throw trash at Eli's door, shout at customers. Martha poured dirty water from her window onto his goods. Every single day. Eli reported them to the police. Nothing happened. By November 2006, just a few weeks before Christmas, Eli's busiest season, the tension hit its peak. He brought in a massive shipment of herbs, teas, and oils. Business boomed. And once again, the Tillmans tried to copy him, bought their own batch of herbs and reopened their shop. But history repeated itself. No one came. Zach spent hours just sitting in the store, staring out the window at Eli's crowded shop, his blood boiling. Then came December 27, 2006. A few days before New Year's. That day, Eli followed his normal routine. He opened the shop early, worked straight through until late into the night. Business was non-stop. Around 11 p.m., the store across the street turned off its lights. Eli's son, at home, noticed something odd. His father was late. Very late. They waited. Midnight passed. Then 1 a.m. Nothing. They called his phone. No answer. By 2:30 a.m., his eldest son couldn't take it anymore. He threw on a jacket and headed toward the shop. The door was closed. The lights were off. Everything looked normal. The building manager told him, "Yeah, your dad was here. He worked all day. I heard the door shut around 11:04. But he never came home." Back at the house, panic set in. This wasn't like Eli. He didn't go out. He didn't drink. He didn't disappear. At sunrise, the family went back to the shop. Maybe, just maybe, he'd fallen asleep inside. But the door was locked. They asked the building manager for a spare key. "I don't have one," he said. "The only copy I gave out was to Eli." That's when the fear became real. They started knocking on doors, asking neighbors. "Did anyone see Eli last night?" Nothing. No one saw him leave. No one saw him at all after 11 p.m. Just like that, Eli Harrison was gone. For 2 full days, Eli's family waited. They called everyone, vendors, suppliers, even delivery guys. "Have you seen Eli Harrison?" Every single person said the same thing. "Nope. Last time we saw him was 2 days ago." He never showed up after that. That's when the family went back to the police. They filed an official missing persons report. The officer on duty wrote down the basics. Eli was 56. Stable. Responsible. Owned a business. Not the type to disappear. But the department brushed it off. He's an adult. Maybe he needed a break. Maybe he went to visit someone, they said. But Eli's wife insisted. He didn't go anywhere. He didn't even visit his parents for the holidays. He never left without telling me. His phone is off. Something's wrong. Still, the cops weren't convinced. Christmas came and went. While the whole town celebrated, Eli's wife and kids sat at home, staring at the door, hoping he'd walk in. He didn't. They didn't even slaughter the Christmas turkey. After the holidays, Eli's wife returned to the station every single day. She begged them to take her seriously. Finally, one officer decided to dig a little deeper. He told her, "Okay. Let's go back to the shop. Let's take another look." They broke the lock and entered Eli's store. Everything looked normal. Inventory was in place. No signs of blood. No signs of struggle. Nothing. Just silence. And then, something strange happened. A woman from the apartment above came downstairs. She was in her late 50s. Lived alone. Kept to herself. But she said something that made the officer pause. "I saw something that night. You might want to hear it," she told them. At around midnight on December 27th, she was standing at her window, like she always did. She had a clear view of Eli's shop. She saw him finish locking up. Saw him head down the street, like usual. But right after Eli disappeared from view, Zach Tillman came out of his mother's house. He was wearing dark clothes. Hoodie. Gloves. She said he looked nervous, like someone with a purpose. He was dragging something, a large blue plastic bin. The kind of bin people store holiday decorations in, she said. Only, it looked heavy. Too heavy for lights and garland. She watched as Zach walked toward his garage. Knocked twice. Martha opened the door. Together, they dragged the bin inside. Then they shut the door behind them. The woman kept watching. 30 minutes later, Zach came out again. His hoodie was off. He looked sweaty. Pale. And he just stood outside smoking. Staring into nothing. That was the last time she saw them. Until the night of New Year's Eve, when their shop suddenly reopened, without Eli. The officer listened carefully. He took her statement. And for the first time, the police had a suspect. They started to dig. They learned that Eli had rented from the Tillmans for over 30 years. Neighbors told them about months of harassment, arguments, and finally how Eli moved across the street and stole all their business back. Motive, revenge. Opportunity, last seen leaving work, past midnight. Witness, saw Zach dragging a bin with something inside. The case had just turned from missing person to possible homicide. Police had enough. After the neighbor's statement, the timeline, the motive, and everything pointing in one direction, they moved in. SWAT and detectives showed up at the house of Martha Tillman, Eli's former landlady. They arrested her, her son Zach, and her 2 daughters. All 4 were taken to the precinct for questioning. First up, Martha. They asked her, "When was the last time you saw Eli Harrison?" She replied coldly, "When he moved out of my shop, that was the end of it. No contact after that. We had no relationship. He walked away." But detectives pushed harder. They said, "We have witnesses. People say you and your son were harassing Eli. That you broke his merchandise. That you couldn't stand the fact that he was doing better than you." Martha's face tightened. She denied everything. "That's all lies. I haven't seen him in weeks. And frankly, I don't care where he is." She even added, "He left his evil energy behind. Nothing we sold worked. Everything we touched went bad." Then came her daughters. Unlike Martha, they were nervous. Tense. And they started talking. They told detectives that things between Eli and their family had become toxic. "Mom and Zach hated him," one daughter said. "They used to say he stole their life. That he humiliated them when he moved out and started selling better." Then came Zach. Detectives told him they had a warrant for the garage. That they were going to rip open the tile floor. His face went pale. He muttered something about how he and his mom fixed the garage floor themselves, just before the holidays. Detectives weren't buying it. They walked straight into the garage. At first glance, it looked normal. But the moment they stepped on the floor, something was off. The tiles were new. Too new. And poorly laid, misaligned, uneven, amateur work. They asked again. Who did this? Martha said. Zach and I did. We couldn't afford a professional. Detectives nodded, and then said. We're tearing it up. As they removed the tiles, the smell hit them first. That unmistakable, rotten, sweet stench of death. They dug carefully. And beneath the floor, wrapped in a tarp, they found Eli Harrison's body. Now it was over. Zach cracked first. In full confession, he told detectives everything. It was the week before Christmas. We had a ton of inventory, same stuff Eli was selling. But no one came to us. Everyone still bought from him. Everything we bought spoiled. My mom was furious. She said Eli cursed us. Said he humiliated us. We decided, if we couldn't beat him, we'd take him out. On the night of December 27th, Zach waited outside the shop. He followed Eli as he walked home. The street was empty. Cold. No cameras. No witnesses. I picked up a rock. I smashed him in the back of the head. He didn't go down at first, so I hit him again. And again. I dragged his body to the garage. My mom helped me wrap it. We tiled over it the next morning. Zach was arrested for second-degree murder. Martha for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The daughters were released, no charges filed. The motive, jealousy, resentment, revenge. Eli Harrison was buried beneath the same shop he once worked in. Zach's confession didn't stop with the murder. He told them exactly what happened afterward. I dragged his body into the garage. My mom was waiting for me. We didn't speak much. We just started digging. It was 1 a.m. They took turns using a shovel and a pickaxe, silently, for hours. They dug deep enough to make sure no one would ever find it. By morning, I got up, went out, bought tiles and mortar. Then Mom and I tiled the floor ourselves. Covered everything. No ceremony. No remorse. Just business. Months later, after multiple court hearings, justice came down hard. Zach Tillman was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Martha Tillman received 15 years for conspiracy and helping conceal the murder. Her daughters were never charged. The town of Ellensburg, Washington, was left shaken. The store remained closed. And a man who had served his community for over 30 years, was buried under a place he once loved. Folks, sometimes evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes, it bakes you cookies, smiles at you in the hallway, and asks about your family. Be careful who you trust. Because some people, they're not people at all. They're predators. Hiding in plain sight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a new story. We cover real stories every day, because the truth is always stranger than fiction.